What's up, my know-it-alls? It's time for another review, but specifically it's the spoiler review for Ant-Man Quantumania. So hopefully you watched my my non-spoiler review, which is where I gave my rating, which my rating for this movie is an 8, flat out 8. Okay, know-it-all index. What I'm going to try to do now is I want to talk a little bit about this. I feel like so what we're going to do is we're going to do good old-fashioned, what you're used to seeing from Mr. Know-it-all, which is a recap and review. So the recap, let's get into. So the movie starts exactly the way it sounds like it starts, which from the trailers, which is that we see Scott walking around, cock of the walk. He's like, hey man, this is my life. It's what I do now. And so he's constantly trying to he's sort of looking for validation in the world for who he is to make sure he's not a fraud of any kind. And I don't think he's a fraud, but at the same time, so everybody he walks up to and he meets and stuff like that. This and that, of course, is that really cute scene where the one guy who's at like a Starbucks or some pseudo Starbucks, calls him, "Thanks a lot, Spider-Man." And, you sit here and you go, really, dude? Seriously? Anyway. But then by the way, they waste no time. After this opening that you think, oh my gosh, there's so many things forever. By the way, you don't have any of the other guys from this thing, so I'm letting you know up front. The other characters, Michael Pena and such, and all those guys aren't there. What you get is you get the family. You get the Pym family along with the Langs, and it's a nice moment. And then Scott gets called to go pick up Cassie in jail, and apparently this has become a somewhat regular thing. And she is definitely taking that course where she's learning how to be the worst parts of the things her dad didn't want her to be. Okay, and there's nothing wrong with that. She's a fun character. Come to find out, she shrank something or whatever, a police car, and she gives it to Scott. She's like, "Here, by the way, it's a little San Francisco police car, whatever." Anyway, so then they go and she's showing them this thing that she's done that's super fancy. They have a conversation. Come to find out, she's been hanging out with everybody else beside, and they're working on something. And he's like, "Can we tell me what we're working on?" You really get the sense Scott is that disconnected from what's going on. And to the point that he's like, well, I helped save, I saved the world with the Avengers and this and that. And they're all like, really? Yeah, we hadn't heard. You should write a book. And because he has a book and he does a whole book reading in the thing. Anyways, it's wonderful. By the way, the corniest, cheesiest parts of his book later on prove to be the things that come back around and make everybody like, gotta fight for the little guy. And all the, oh, it's great. It's all these fun little clever lines and puns and all kinds of things that are going on in this thing. It's good. So anyway, so Cassie's showing him this thing she's built. It's essentially sort of it has the ability to scan the quantum realm to allow them to explore it a little more safely from up here. The thing which she didn't mention anybody at the time, because nobody apparently has told this to Janet. Janet has been very hush-hush about her time in the quantum realm. And she's shocked, if not stunned. She's like, you sending a signal down to the quantum realm? Shut it off. And they do. They do. Until they don't. Suddenly signal comes back and they get sucked in and they're falling through the quantum realm. Point of order. There was a giant ant farm thing that apparently the ants have been building their own technology and everything else. Like apparently Hank taught them how to do that back when they were helping with the lab and stuff. And so they've just been developing their own technology. Like they build stuff on their own. He communicates with them. Anyway. So everything gets sucked in, including this giant ant thing at some point or other, because remember, as you go into the quantum realm, you get smaller. You get littler. So as he's getting smaller, the ant farm is not shrinking. And so he's like sliding, he being Scott, is sliding along it until it finally shatters, and then you see all the ants get lost in the quantum wherever. We'll come back to that. Eventually, everybody land in two different groups. You have Scott and Cassie who are in one group, because clearly this is the easiest writer's contrivance you can do in order to get everybody in one space for a thing. So Scott and Cassie obviously have work they got to do. And now, by the way, Michael Douglas, he's just in for the ride. Michael Douglas isn't in this movie any more than Evangeline Lilly is, but he's having the time of his life in this thing. At least I think so. I enjoy the heck out of him. So then you have as they start to meet people, what's really great is, so apparently Cassie and Scott, they're doing an abysmal, they run into whatever the resistance is, because the resistance are apparently those who are resisting something. But then you get this moment where Janet has to be like, okay, everybody shut up, let me do the talking. And you meet some people who she's friends with, and she knows how to do their talk or whatever else. They go someplace to a specific kind of place. She's looking for a specific person, Bill Murray. And while they're there, cut here. Go back over to where Scott and Cassie are. They get captured. There's this guy who's like blah, blah, making noises and stuff. Everybody's making noise. Everyone's speaking alien languages. And they pour this stuff. As he goes up, Cassie's like, drink the slime. And he's like, what? And so finally he drinks the slime. It looks literally like a scene out of, you have expect the Molaram, the guy from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, to come out and be like, ooh, la, la, la. Kalima Shakti De. Whatever, just seriously, because it looks so crazy the way they have him surrounded and there's all this stuff, and then finally he drinks the thing and they pour it in his mouth. He can hear. It's designed to make it so he can hear. So now he can understand their voices. He understands everybody understands everybody else. This whole thing is wonderful. Now we're going to get into a moment here. I'm gonna back up. Janet tells a story. The story Janet tells specifically is the story of how she was there at the quantum realm for a number of years by herself. And then he showed up. The traveler called himself a traveler, never called himself a conqueror. And he shows up and he apparently had been banished there. We don't know that yet, but at the end of the day, she helps him rebuild the thing he needs, which is this tiny little time. It's an engine that allows his time chair to go anywhere in space and time he wants. Okay. And he tells her flat out, he's like, look, I'll take you home. You're good, this and that. But when she goes to touch the engine, she connects briefly to his mind. And she gets to truly see Kang the Conqueror. And she is floored, devastated, horrified, and realized Janet's the one. She takes the engine part thing. She only has a couple of the little dart guys that go make you big or small, and she slams them against it, thus making it huge and making the entire thing untenable. He can't use it. And then she escaped after she left. And he was hunting her down, this and that, whatever else. Anyway, so now we go back to them in the bar, and you get to meet Bill Murray, who shows up. Come to find out, it's funny. This whole scene is very reminiscent of the End of Line Club scene from Tron Legacy. By that I mean the guy the proprietor of End of Line is supposed to be someone who can help the hero, and turns out that they've over years and years and years gotten beat up so badly by the antagonist, by the villain, that they're like, you know what, I'm just gonna work. It's fine, whatever, and they've given up. That's what happens here. Bill Murray has given up. By the way, come to find out, Bill Murray's character was apparently Janet Van Dyne's, was her lover while he was here because she has needs. And it's so funny because everyone's like, oh my God, I don't know what's going on here. It's terrible. By the way, several points, both Scott and Hank have noticed like there's sounds like a signal of some kind coming through their little ant earpiece. Again, I'll get back to that. So Bill Murray comes to find out he works for, and everybody looks at Janet accusatorily. Like, you got out and you left us with him. You created this problem and you abandoned us. This is why she didn't tell anybody anything. She literally left everyone behind. Admit it. At least one person in this audience has had to abandon an apartment and not cleaned it up the way it's supposed to and not gotten their security deposit. Okay? Trust me, I know the scenario. So we've all been in there. We're like, oh, we got to go way out. Bail, eject. That's really what's happened. So, meanwhile, the Resistance finds out that Cassie and them came with Janet. Thus, if you're with her, he's looking for you too. He being Kang. They never say the name yet. But and so yeah, come to find out when they track them all down. Dude. So you think because they're in the quantum realm, they're already small. But while they're there, they can do the thing they normally do. So Scott can turn big. The difference is big is relative. So where normally out in quote unquote the real world, 60 feet is big. He gets as big as like 400 feet in this thing. Massive. Several times. And then you find out as they're running away from the enemies, Cassie has a suit. She hadn't told him yet, but she has one, and she shrinks. She's an Ant-Man. She's an ant person, ant girl, whatever you want to call her. But she doesn't have wings. She's not like She's not like Hope, but she's definitely like her dad. And so she shrinks. She's this and that, and he tries to tell her. He's like, no, you can't. She tries to do the jump and like shrink and punch thing, but she keeps punching when she's tiny. And and even Scott's like, yeah, no, that's not how it works. Anyway, so while they're at the place, they get attacked, and they fight back. That's when, and again, he starts to hear some stuff. They get on the ship. When they're on Bill Murray's ship, there's these like jelly things that come up, and what's his name? Hank has to put his arms in them, and that's how they fly the ship. It's very intuitive, so you just kind of assume, we sort of take it all on faith. Everyone's like, well, how come he knows how to fly an alien ship? Come on, dude. The guy's brilliant. It's whatever, man. Let's just move on with life. I'm here for the adventure. I'm here for the story. Okay. I've read more than one book that didn't explain all the details to me, and I just enjoyed hearing the story. Same thing. I'm here for the story. And they did a great job. They outlined for you a lot of things. So at one point, so I thought, like many of you probably did, when you watch the trailer, oh, well, Scott's going to end up having to betray everybody, and that's what Kang wants, and this and that. No, he just wants his little time power thing back. So he tells Scott flat out, he's like, dude, you want your daughter alive? No problem, and I'll even take you guys home. Let's go. So he does. He goes to where the thing is. The problem is, it's so because it's been there so long, it's starting to radiate temporal energy. And so the minute he shows up, another him shows up. That's that scene you see where there's multiple Scotts everywhere. That's because it's a place where probability breaks down. Every possible version of him shows up because literally it just pops out. Like, I could do this thing, option A, option B. These two guys, option A, option B, same thing. There's one Baskin Robbins Scott, which I find hilarious. He's got the pink outfit and the blue hat, the whole 9 yards. But anyway, and so several of them keep trying to I'm going to do this and grow big, and they die immediately. He figures out, because just like ants, they all want the same thing. So they do like the ants did in the first one. They all start to clump together and make room for him to climb. And so you see this teetering tower heading up toward the giant thing. And so what does he do? He loads up his little shrinky dart guys and is like, along with Hope, who flies in. And Hope, by the way, there's 100 of her. There's a whole swarm of Hopes, which is great. So between her and Scott shooting the shrinking darts at this giant thing, they eventually get it down to normal size. And that's where Kang shows up. Kang shows up, and boy, is he brutal. Oh, by the way, Darren Cross is back. Darren is MODOK. And it is Darren from the first Ant-Man movie. Yeah, dude. Oh my gosh. Darren's funny. He's kind of adorable, actually. And they did a passably decent job representing MODOK. Do I think he would have been better with like the voice of Patton Oswalt? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, I was super excited to see him, and I get what they did with him. This is Cassie's nightmare come to life. And her and him have this really great moment. And at the end, she ultimately is like, dude, stop being a dick. And he's literally like, I don't know how to be anything else. Like, he feels so bad, and he's so sad. And you can't help but feel bad for him. Anyways, but yeah, this whole thing, as it starts to get bigger and bigger and more there, you find out Kang's not just leaving. He doesn't want this engine just to power his chair. For the years that he's been there, he's built an empire in the quantum realm. He wants to take it with him. He literally wants to take, that's why, so when you see in the trailer that part where those giant rings are coming out over his tower, over his palace, that looks and represents what the little teeny ball looks like, because he's got to travel through time. So, and Scott, greatest moment in Scott Lang's life. He becomes this giant 200, 300 foot tall version, and he's like, Kang, we had a deal, and now and he's just like, he's like a kaiju Ant-Man just kicking walls of the city. And dude, Kang's terrified. He's like, quick, stop it. Don't let him get the thing. Don't let him do this and that. Because what I love is if I have a complaint, it's hard to tell where the power scale is here. The power scale is very difficult to keep up with. So 1 minute, like at some point, Kang's like just pulling people over and doing things with just hands and gestures and stuff. And the next minute, you have Scott who's who's fighting his force shields because he's big. I don't necessarily know what being giant has to do with being able to defeat a force field, but I'm okay. I'm okay not understanding that. I don't need to understand that. So, as they go, it looks Kang begins to whoop everybody. And then we cut to back where so during the big fight when Kang got the time engine thing, Hank was shot down. The little ship he was controlling with his hands got shot down. Guess who showed up to save him, to rescue him? The ants. He's been catching a signal. They talk to him. And they flat out explained to him, they spent 1,000 years in the quantum realm. They built a kingdom of their own, a true technological Marvel empire. And the whole purpose of it was to find Hank Pym. You think your dog is loyal? Bro, when you have 1 million ants who have grown through thousands of years to develop technology so that they can save the guy who's like, that's awesome. It's so great. And at one point during the big fight, they show up to help. So Scott's getting beat up. Kang has finally come down, and he's just unleashing holy hell on everybody, just vaporizing people left and right. And everyone's like, oh no, we're going to be defeated. This rebellion's about to be shut down. And that's when the ants show up, and they are relentless. And as they part, here comes Hank Pym just walking all. He's got a duster on. He's just like, he might as well be like, hey, what's going on? Like he runs. It's like, the original Ant-Man has arrived. It's brilliant. It's so good. I love it. The fight is climactic, of course. I don't find it a contrivance how they did what they did. This particular, I'm a spoiler, this particular Kang is gone. He's defeated. I love the moment when Scott's like, I don't have to win. We just both have to lose. And I was like, that's what I'm talking about, man. Nobody can understand that. Nobody, unless you have children or unless you have that, you never will understand that. When it comes to protecting the people you love, you don't have to win. The bad guys just have to lose. And that's all that matters. Man, I tell you what, it's good stuff. And then you see them and then eventually, it's a moment, man. And then you have this wonderful montage at the end that mirrors the one at the front. But in this one, several times, Scott gets this crazy paranoid, like, oh my God, what's going on? He said, people are coming, this and that, blah, blah, blah. And then he finally is like, what am I talking about? What do I care? The guy's crazy. He's not to be trusted. Whatever, man. And you realize he's maybe overthinking things. All in all, this was an excellent MCU movie. It's not going to blow your socks off or blow you away because you've seen it all. We saw Thanos, and we saw an army of his aliens and this and that several times. We saw Ultron. So at the end of the day, this is just another massive thing they have to deal with. The phrase incursions was dropped, which is wonderful, and that you get the idea. There's 2 post-credit scenes. The very first one is specific to sort of what is happening in the movie itself. I don't want to spoil everything because I feel like there's still reasons for you guys to go see. There is also a second spoiler, which a second scene, which if you know anything about the spoilers and some of the folks that I follow online and Twitter and some of the podcasts I've been on, we knew there were some leaks to this effect before. The second one leads into the Loki TV show, or might lead out of. I don't know. It depends on where it takes place. But I'm not going to tell you. I don't want to tell you too much about it. I want you to watch it. Please watch it. The reason I'm not telling you about a lot of the cut scenes is because the end credit scenes is I want you guys to see the movie. Go see the movie. Check it out for yourself. It's not about being impressed or not impressed. Watch the movie as if you're enjoying a movie. Let's get into the place where, hey, we're not worried about whether it's a sci-fi movie, a fantasy movie, or whatever movie. It's not about superhero fatigue. It's about movie fatigue. And I don't think we have that. I enjoyed this movie, and I think other people will enjoy this movie. The difference is we live in a world where 25 years has established these are the kinds of things we're getting. And I don't have a problem with that. So I'm down, man. So there you go. Now you know. And if knowing is half the battle, you're halfway to being a know-it-all yourself. I would absolutely love to know your thoughts. Heck, give me your ratings. I stick by my 8 from the non-spoiler review. So yeah, man, I'd love to know what you thought about the movie if you've seen it. If you haven't seen it, what are you doing here? Dude, you go watch the movie. Seriously. Don't wait for it. See, the visuals are so epic. By the way, Mrs. Know-It-All and I, we saw this movie in real 3D. They have improved that technology a lot. It was so good. I was blown away. Normally, like where images and stuff hit the tops or the sides, it's distracting. This didn't do that. I wasn't distracted in the least. Everything was clear. Everything was in focus. It wasn't too dark or shady because if you look at 3D glasses, they're a little tinted. Anyway, all right, guys. Well, listen, I'd love to talk more about this, but let's converse. I'd love to hear what your thoughts were. All right, guys. We'll talk to you soon. Never forget, everyone loves a know-it-all.